Stepmom demanded I pay $690 rent, so I took back the $1,159,000 house my grandparents left me. When my mother died, I was 8, old enough to understand that something terrible had happened but too young to grasp that grief doesn't arrive, finish its work, and leave. It moves in, rearranges your rooms, and teaches you new rules for breathing. Breast cancer took her in slow pieces, appointments, sterile hallways, long pauses where my father, Daniel, spoke softer as if quiet could keep death from noticing us, and when she was gone he didn't collapse theatrically, he just hollowed out, still showing up to work, still paying bills, still nodding at people who told him he was so strong, while at night he paced through the dark like a man searching for the version of his life that had disappeared. My mother's parents, my grandparents, stepped in before we could fall. They were comfortable, not wildly rich, but steady enough to do something that felt generous at the time and later proved to be protection. They bought a big 4-bedroom house in one of Boston's nicer districts and insisted we all live together. Under that roof, we found a rhythm, homework at a wide table, my grandmother humming as she folded towels, my grandfather reading with his glasses sliding down his nose, my father slowly returning in small careful pieces, and for a while I believed that safety was something you could rebuild if you worked hard enough at it. 2 years after the funeral, Daniel met Vanessa at a business conference in Chicago. He said they clicked, said she made him feel hopeful again, and I wanted to be happy for him, because kids want their parent to stop looking like a ghost, but hope can be a candle in a windy room, and Vanessa arrived fast, visiting within months, married within 6, and she moved into our home as if she'd always belonged there, bringing her 2 kids, Tyler, 11 and already entitled in a way that felt practiced, and Brianna, 7, sweet enough at first that I almost felt sorry for her. My grandparents tried to be kind, though late at night I overheard them speaking in those careful adult whispers, my grandfather saying he didn't trust her, my grandmother answering that grief makes people easy to manipulate. I pretended I hadn't heard, because I didn't want to be the one who took happiness away from my father again. Vanessa's changes started small, disguised as improvements. She criticized the house, moved furniture without asking, and little pieces of my mother began to vanish, an ornament here, a photo there, always with that calm practical voice that said she felt entitled to rewrite our home. And then came the chores. Everyone should help, Vanessa said, which sounded fair until fairness bent into a shape that always landed on me. By 12, I was cooking, cleaning, washing laundry, scrubbing bathrooms, wiping baseboards until my fingers hurt, while Tyler was busy with sports and my father paid for extra coaching, and Brianna was too young, even though she was barely younger than me. Vanessa didn't guide, she inspected, running a finger along a baseboard, sighing at a dish placed wrong, speaking to me like I was a problem to fix rather than a child trying to survive a new normal. Years blurred. I worked part-time, took classes, and kept the house running. Tyler grew into a loud kind of laziness. Brianna learned Vanessa's habits, the eye roll, the performative innocence, the way you can treat someone like the help and still call it family. My grandparents aged, and the house that once felt like a shelter started to feel like a stage where I was always the one doing the work while someone else took the credit. In 2019 my grandmother died, and my grandfather followed only 3 months later, as if he couldn't stay in a world without her. After the second funeral, the house felt different, emptier, colder, and Vanessa got bolder. I didn't know why my grandparents had asked so many questions about the house, the deed, the future. I didn't know they'd already acted. I also didn't know the key fact, my grandparents had put the house in my name. Legally. Cleanly. Deliberately. A home in our area worth around $1,159,000, and they'd made sure it couldn't be taken from me. Daniel knew, apparently, and never told me. Vanessa didn't know, or she would have tried to wrap her name around it the moment she arrived. So when she demanded rent, it started like any other day in my exhausting routine. I had just finished an 8-hour shift at Starbucks, my feet aching, and I came home knowing dinner would still be on me because Tyler wouldn't leave his screen and Brianna wouldn't lift a finger. I was stirring sauce when Vanessa walked into the kitchen dressed like she was about to announce something important, sat at the island, and said, "Maya, we need to talk about your living situation." She spoke smoothly, as if she'd rehearsed. "Your father and I think it's time you started paying rent. You're working now. It isn't fair for you to live here for free. What about Tyler and Brianna? I asked, keeping my voice even. That's different, she said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin she hadn't used. They're still establishing themselves. Then she delivered the number like a verdict. $6.90 a month, plus utilities. And of course you'll keep helping around the house. That's what family does. In that moment I felt something go very quiet inside me. Not numb, clear. She was pricing my existence while ignoring years of labor I'd already given for free. I turned off the burner, set the spoon down, and said, "Okay." Her mouth twitched with satisfaction. Then I added, "Call Tyler. Call Brianna. Let's all talk about it at the table." Tyler came down irritated, as if being asked to show up for a family conversation was an insult. Brianna followed with her phone in hand, half ready to turn pain into content. Vanessa sat at the head of the table like she owned the room and repeated her points: fairness, responsibility, family, until the words started to sound like a cover story. $6.90, she said again. Plus utilities. I didn't argue. I said, calmly, "I'm not paying rent. Because this house belongs to me." The silence was sharp. Then Tyler laughed, dismissive. Brianna's smile flickered like she didn't know what to do with seriousness. Vanessa smiled too, except hers was tight, controlled. "This house is mine and your father's," she said. "Call Daniel," I answered. "Ask him." She dialed fast and put it on speaker, as if the truth would obey her. When my father answered, she turned sweet. "Daniel, Maya is claiming the house belongs to her. That isn't true, right?" There was a pause. Then he cleared his throat. "Well, your parents, my in-laws, they put the house in Maya's name before they passed." The air changed. Tyler stopped laughing. Brianna lowered her phone. Vanessa froze, eyes wide like her mind had stalled. "What do you mean they put it in her name?" she snapped. "When were you going to tell me?" "I didn't think it was important," Daniel said quietly. "Not important." That sentence hit me harder than Vanessa's rage, because it explained the years, my father choosing the easiest path, even when it cost me. Vanessa ended the call with a sharp tap and forced calm onto her face. "This has clearly been a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "Of course you don't have to pay rent. Let's forget this conversation." Forget. Reset. Pretend. "We're not forgetting it," I said, my voice steady. "In fact, I think it's time we talk about your living situation." For the first time, fear flickered across her expression, not guilt, not remorse, just the fear of losing control. After dinner, nobody really ate. The food cooled, the house went tense, and Vanessa followed me into the hallway with that controlled, reasonable voice she used when she wanted to sound gentle while applying pressure. "We can handle this as a family," she said, then lowered her tone. "Don't embarrass your father. Don't force him to choose." That word, choose, made something break cleanly inside me, because I realized she had been demanding that choice for years, quietly, and he had let her. I went to my room and cried once, not from fear, but from grief for the family I'd kept trying to protect. That night I lay awake with two thoughts fighting in my chest: relief that the truth was finally out, and a sick, childlike ache that my father had known and stayed quiet. In the morning, I heard Vanessa in the kitchen on speakerphone with Daniel, already pushing her next move. She applied to out-of-state programs, Vanessa said smoothly. Encourage her to go. Independence. A fresh start. And honestly, I'm worried about her mental health. All this anger isn't healthy. Time away might help. And Daniel, tired, convenient, said, maybe you're right. I'll talk to her. It didn't sound like cruelty. It sounded like avoiding discomfort, and it still felt like abandonment. That morning I didn't explode. I didn't throw the truth in their faces like a grenade. I made breakfast the way I always had, because habits don't dissolve instantly just because you've finally named the problem, and I watched Vanessa perform kindness with the same hands she used to inspect my work. Tyler stomped in late, angry at the air itself. Brianna sat down and avoided my eyes, still scrolling, still pretending she could stay above it all. Vanessa tried to corner me gently, which was always her first move when she wanted me to doubt myself. "We should talk later," she said, sweet as syrup. "Your father worries about you." "I heard your call," I answered, evenly. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, and then she reached for outrage. "You were eavesdropping?" "I live here," I said. "And I'm done being discussed like I'm a problem to relocate." When she leaned in and told me, again, that I was too angry, that I needed space, that college far away would help, I realized something else. She was trying to medicalize my boundary, to turn self-respect into instability. And when that failed, her voice dropped, stripped of the syrup. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "You don't know what you're doing. I can make this very difficult for you." I didn't argue. I simply took my phone from my pocket, not brandishing it, just holding it like a tool, and said, "Then don't. Because from now on, everything that happens in this house will be documented." I walked into the kitchen a minute later as if I hadn't heard anything. Vanessa startled, then recovered with a bright smile. "Good morning, sweetie. I made coffee." I didn't correct her. I wasn't interested in small fights anymore. I texted Daniel what I'd heard, short, direct, and then I called Natalie, my mom's friend, the one adult who had always watched Vanessa with clear eyes. Natalie didn't sound surprised. "Come by tonight," she said. "Bring whatever paperwork you have. And don't let Vanessa corner you alone." The lawyer Natalie connected me with spoke in steps, not drama. She confirmed the deed. She explained what my grandparents had set up to protect it. Then she said, "You do this the right way. Notice. Filing. Hearing. Order. Sheriff. Clean. Safe." Boring, I learned, can be power. When I told Daniel I was moving forward legally, he tried to sound stunned. "I didn't know it was this bad." "You did," I said quietly. "You just didn't want to look at it." There was a long pause, and then he exhaled. "I'll support what you need to do," he said, and it wasn't heroic, but it was weight placed on my side of the scale for the first time in years. Serving the notice turned the house into a pressure chamber. Vanessa cycled through tactics, sweetness, anger, shame, fake concern, trying to find the version of herself that would make me fold. Tyler raged and slammed doors. Brianna cried and posted vague quotes about toxic people. I kept my voice low and my steps practical, because I finally understood that I didn't need to win their approval, I needed to end their access to me. Vanessa tried to rewrite the story outside the house too, vague posts about ungrateful children, messages to relatives meant to pressure me back into silence, but legal paper has a way of draining drama of its power. Tyler's anger turned into bargaining, Brianna's tears turned into avoidance. I told them both the same thing. This wasn't a negotiation about comfort, it was a line about respect, and it was already crossed. The hearing was brief. The judge cared about facts, and the facts were on paper with my name on them. When the order came through, I expected triumph. What I felt instead was my body remembering how to breathe. A week before the final deadline, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the camera I'd installed. On my break at work, I opened the feed and saw Vanessa in my mother's old room, moving with purpose, lifting velvet boxes, sliding my mother's antique necklace into her purse. No tears. No hesitation. Just entitlement. I called the police. Footage doesn't argue. The necklace came back into my hands, and Vanessa's performance fell flat in front of an officer who didn't care about her family story. That night Daniel texted from a hotel. "I can't stay there tonight." The day the deputy arrived, the process was calm, professional, almost anticlimactic, and that was the point. Vanessa cried, accused, begged for more time. Tyler panicked over his gaming setup. Brianna clutched her phone like recording could rewrite reality. The deputy stayed neutral. The movers kept packing. The door closed anyway. When they were gone, the house went quiet in a way that felt holy. No shouting. No inspections. No constant tension vibrating in the walls. Just air. That silence didn't instantly feel like happiness. The first nights I woke up expecting footsteps, expecting an argument outside my door, and when it wasn't there my body didn't know what to do with the emptiness. A few days later Natalie helped me clear a closet Vanessa had treated like her territory, and behind boxes we found a small bin my grandparents had tucked away, my mother's handwritten recipe cards, a few ornaments Vanessa claimed she'd donated, a dish towel embroidered with my mother's initials. I sat on the floor holding that towel like it was fragile, because suddenly I wasn't only reclaiming rooms, I was reclaiming proof that my mother had existed here in warmth and detail, and that someone had cared enough to hide pieces of her where they couldn't be erased. For a few days I kept expecting another blow, but what came instead was grief, the kind I'd postponed because survival required me to stay busy. I walked through rooms and saw the absence of my mother in places Vanessa had erased her, and I mourned my grandparents again, and I mourned the version of my father I'd kept hoping would show up. Natalie came over one evening with grocery bags and an apron, and she didn't treat me like a hero or a monster, she treated me like someone who had survived and now needed to learn what safety feels like. She taught me one of my mother's recipes, the one I remembered only as a smell and a warmth, and when she handed me the spoon and said, "Go on," my throat tightened, because stirring felt like reaching backward through time. "She would have been proud of you," Natalie said softly. I wanted to argue, to apologize for protecting myself, to say I'd been harsh. Natalie shook her head like she could hear the thought before I spoke it. "You didn't break it," she said. "You stopped letting it break you." I turned Tyler's old room into a home office, Brianna's room into a space that finally felt like mine, and Vanessa's meditation room into somewhere quiet where I could breathe without being evaluated. Daniel called sometimes, awkward and tired, trying to rebuild trust from rubble, and I didn't forgive him quickly, because forgiveness without change is just another way of abandoning yourself, but I also didn't close the door entirely, because grief had already taught me what a permanent closing sounds like. Now, when I sit at my dining table and the house holds only the sounds of my own life, I understand what my grandparents really left me. Not just a house, but an exit. Not just shelter, but permission. They couldn't stay, but they made sure I had somewhere safe to become myself. Some stories don't end with apologies. They end with understanding. If this story felt familiar, you're not alone. Thank you for listening. This was Block Tales.